In America, when your biggest ally suddenly sounds like your biggest threat, you shrug it off as politics. In Norway right now, their government is quietly preparing contingency plans for what happens if the United States takes Svalbard by force. I'm not talking about a hypothetical. I'm talking about December 2025, 3 weeks ago, when Donald Trump didn't just float the idea of buying Greenland. He refused to rule out military action. And here's what sent chills through Oslo. A former Norwegian defense chief just compared Trump's rhetoric on Greenland to how Putin talked about Ukraine, right before the invasion. By the end of this video, I'm going to show you the exact number, the strategic calculation, that explains why Norway thinks they're next on the list. And trust me, when you see it, America's Arctic policy will never look the same. Let me rewind to Christmas week 2025. Because most Americans were unwrapping presents while one of the biggest geopolitical earthquakes in decades was happening. December 23rd, Equinor, Norway's state-owned energy giant, just lost billions in stock value overnight. But the Trump administration, without warning, yanked the operating licenses for their Empire Wind project off New York. The excuse? National security concerns about wind turbines interfering with radar. Wind turbines. The same technology that's been spinning next to Copenhagen's airport for years. But okay. Same day. Trump escalates his demand for Greenland, calling it necessary for American national security. Denmark's foreign minister summons the U.S. ambassador. It's the diplomatic equivalent of, we need to talk. And Norway? Norway's Prime Minister Jonas Gahr, who's been bending over backward to stay friendly with Trump, issues a statement that, in diplomatic language, basically says, touch Greenland and you're threatening all of us. Here's what Americans need to understand. Greenland isn't just some random island. It sits between North America and Europe. It's got rare earth minerals. It's got oil. And most importantly, it's the cork in the bottle for controlling who gets to move through the Arctic as ice melts and new shipping routes open up. But here's what confused me at first. Why is Norway freaking out? They're not Denmark. Greenland isn't theirs. And that's when I found Svalbard. Okay, here's where this gets weird. Svalbard is this Norwegian archipelago halfway between mainland Norway and the North Pole. About 2,600 people live there. It's got polar bears, coal mines, and something called the Global Seed Vault. Basically humanity's backup drive in case civilization collapses. But Svalbard operates under this treaty from 1920, the Svalbard Treaty, that says Norway controls it, but other countries that sign the treaty get equal rights to exploit resources there. No military bases allowed. It's this weird international neutral zone, in one of the most strategic locations on Earth. Russia signed that treaty. And Russia's been testing Norway's patience there for years. Cyber attacks, aggressive fishing, research vessels that look an awful lot like spy ships. Now guess who else is signaling they might not respect that treaty anymore? As an American, my first instinct was, come on. Trump's just posturing. He's not actually going to invade Greenland. But then I started reading what Norwegian experts are saying, and I realized, we're thinking about this completely wrong. Hilmar Mjelde, a political researcher in Norway, said this. We're on the way back to international policy as it was prior to 1945. It's a world where the strongest take control. Translation? The rules-based order, the thing America supposedly built after World War II, Trump's tearing it up. And if borders and sovereignty don't matter in Greenland, why would they matter in Svalbard? Sverre Dyson, former head of Norway's entire military, wrote that Trump's national security strategy represents a break with everything the USA really is and has wanted to be. Think about that. A NATO ally's top general is saying the United States is becoming unrecognizable. I thought I understood what America first meant. I thought it was about trade deals and bringing jobs back. But when you read Trump's strategy document, it praises authoritarian leaders. It criticizes NATO. And according to Dyson, it presents America as an unfriendly superpower, where putting America first is, first and foremost, about a USA that wants to earn money. That's not the America I thought we were. Look, I started this channel because I became obsessed with a question. Where does the American dream, the idea that you can work hard, play by the rules, and build a stable life, where does that actually exist today? And the more I dig into these comparisons between the US and countries like Norway, the more I realize we've been sold a story that doesn't match reality anymore. If you're on that same journey, if you want to see what's actually working in the world, even when it challenges everything we've been taught, join the Nexora community. Hit subscribe. Because this stuff? It's only getting more intense. Now let me show you the math that has Norway terrified. Greenland has rare earth elements worth an estimated $1.5 trillion. That's not oil. That's minerals critical for batteries, electronics, military tech, everything that runs a modern economy. Norway's Arctic territories? Similar deposits. Svalbard alone has untapped oil and gas reserves, plus those rare earths. But forget the trillion-dollar numbers for a second. Let me translate what this means in human terms. If Trump uses national security as justification to take Greenland, a NATO ally's territory, what's stopping him from doing the same to Norway's Arctic? Norway's been NATO's eyes and ears in the Arctic for decades. They've worked with US forces. They've shared intelligence on Russian movements. They've let American troops train on their soil. And in return, Trump just screwed their state-owned company out of billions. Refused to rule out military force against their closest ally. Published a national security doctrine that reads like, might makes right. Arild Moe, a researcher at Norway's Fridtjof Nansen Institute, said Trump's, "The USA needs Greenland" rhetoric reminds us of how Russia's president thinks about Ukraine. Let me repeat that. A Norwegian expert is comparing American policy to Putin's invasion strategy. Putin said Ukraine wasn't a real country, and Russia needed it for security. Trump's saying Greenland is necessary for American security and won't rule out force. You see the pattern? Okay, but here's where it gets really uncomfortable for Americans like me. Remember how we spent the last 3 years rallying around Ukraine? Sovereignty matters. Borders are sacred. You can't just annex territory because you're stronger. We sent Ukraine tens of billions in aid. We sanctioned Russia into the ground. President Biden called Putin a war criminal. And now our president is doing the same thing. To allies. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen had to release a statement saying, Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders and the USA shall not take it over. We expect respect for our territorial integrity. That's the exact same language Ukraine used about Russia. So what happens to America's moral authority when we're the ones threatening annexation? Norway's in this impossible position. They're a small country, 5.5 million people. Their entire national defense strategy has been built on 2 pillars. 1. NATO collective defense. 2. Partnership with the United States. They've spent decades positioning themselves as America's most reliable Arctic partner. They've hosted US Marines. They've prepositioned American military equipment on Norwegian soil in case of Russian aggression. And now they're watching Trump publicly humiliate their Danish neighbors, threaten territorial integrity, and turn national security into a blank check for whatever he wants. Prime Minister Støre tried everything to stay on Trump's good side. He took the diplomatic route. He emphasized shared values. He backed NATO spending increases. Didn't matter. Equinor still got crushed right before Christmas. Here's what keeps Norwegian officials up at night. If Trump takes Greenland, whether through coercion or actual force, the precedent is set. Suddenly, the Svalbard Treaty means nothing. Suddenly, any territory with strategic resources becomes fair game if a stronger power decides they need it for security. And here's the kicker. Russia's already been pushing boundaries on Svalbard. Cyber attacks. Aggressive fishing. Research missions. If America signals that Arctic sovereignty is negotiable, Russia's going to call and raise. This isn't hypothetical. Norwegian media spent Christmas week debating whether they need to militarize Svalbard, breaking the treaty themselves, just to prevent someone else from taking it first. That's where we are. That's what Trump's rhetoric has created. Quick question for you. Do you think the US should take Greenland by force if Denmark refuses to negotiate? Drop your answer in the comments. I'm genuinely curious how Americans feel about this, because it's not getting much coverage back home. And if you know someone who still thinks Trump's foreign policy is just tough negotiating, share this video. They need context. Okay, let's bring this home. Remember at the start when I said there was a number, a calculation, that explains why Norway thinks they're next? Here it is. The US has military bases in over 750 locations globally. Norway has 0 foreign bases. The US spends $877 billion annually on defense. Norway spends $8 billion. Military power ratio, 109-1. If the United States decides it needs Norwegian Arctic territory for national security, using the exact same logic Trump's applying to Greenland, what's Norway going to do? Fight the US military? They can't. Nobody can. That's the point. The only thing that's protected small countries like Norway, Denmark, the Baltics, the only thing that's prevented a return to 19th century imperialism where big countries just take what they want, is the rules-based international order. The idea that treaties matter. That borders matter. That sovereignty isn't just for superpowers. Trump's not just threatening Greenland. He's threatening the entire framework that's kept Europe stable since 1945. And here's what kills me as an American. We built that framework. After World War II, the US led the creation of NATO, the UN, the system of international law that said wars of conquest were over. We did that because we learned that instability anywhere eventually becomes instability everywhere. Now we're the ones tearing it down. So is Norway next? Honestly? I don't know. Maybe Trump's just bluffing on Greenland. Maybe this all blows over. But the fact that Norway's government is taking it seriously, that their former defense chief is comparing American rhetoric to Putin, that tells you how far trust has eroded. If you found this valuable, do 2 things. 1. Hit the like button. YouTube's algorithm needs to know people care about this stuff, because mainstream news is barely covering it. 2. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this story isn't over. If Trump actually moves on Greenland, or if Norway starts militarizing Svalbard, you'll want to understand what's happening before the headlines spin it. The American dream I grew up believing in wasn't about bullying allies and taking what we want. It was about building something better. A world where strength meant protecting the weak, not exploiting them. I still think that dream exists. I'm just not sure it lives in America anymore. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.